This is the hilt pommel assembly of the STARKILLER saber, assembled. These are the parts required. The hilt pommel assembly here, the copper shroud pieces, 3 of the same, 1 is separate, has a hole in, the cover tech piece, these 4 spines, this 632 screw here for the cover tech piece. Also required is a 3/32 hex key and super glue. If we unpack the copper shroud pieces, lay them out and see, we have 3 of the same, 1 with a hole in. The piece with the hole in corresponds to the cover tech. Here, the screw is used for this, and the hex key. A small dab of glue should be applied to the hilt. This should be screwed on. Take care not to get glue into the threads. These screws do not require much torque. From there, we start with the first spine. A small amount of glue will be applied here and here. Set in like this. The second shroud piece sits in like that, with a small amount of glue again. You can hold those till they're set. You follow on around the saber like this. Ensure that they sit all the way into the recess. And when you reach the final side here, the shroud goes in first, and the final spines capture everything in place. This video is for the emitter sub assembly at the top here. For this you need the emitter sleeve, the emitter upper, the bunny ears, the bunny ear clamp, this 440 socket head screw, 440 set screw, and this oval head screw. The emitter upper sits in the sleeve like so, and the oval head screw secures it.
We don't tighten them down all the way till you get every fastener in, every part, then you go back through and you give it the time. And it's something to mention, do not reef or over tighten any of these screws at all. A lot of the screws that go into the titanium, you will snap the screw off before it'll happen. Even a stainless steel screw, you will snap it off, and the size of these, there's not a whole lot of shear strength. It's more than adequate to hold the parts together. Just don't over torque them.
And there are no replacement parts.
Yeah, there's no replacement parts for these.
This video is for the emitter sub assembly. You need the emitter sleeve, the upper emitter, the bunny ears, the bunny ear clamp for the blade. First, the upper emitter is inserted into the sleeve here. The oval screw secures that in place.
Just like on a Graplex.
These screws only need light torque. The bunny ears have 2 holes in the top, a counterboard hole for the socket screw, a through hole for the set screw. The clamp has a blind hole for the socket screw and a threaded through hole for the set screw. This is for blade retention. The socket screw goes into the counterboard hole. Which is the lower hole on the sleeve here.
Towards the red button.
I'm going to screw that down.
Notice how this Allen key is being used. Like this. This applies less leverage to the fastener. Do not over torque any of these screws, or you will break them, especially on like the control box and some of the other smaller stuff. Just snug, gently snug. Where the screw stops, that's where you stop. Don't go past it.
The set screw passes through here and out the other side
to hold the blade plug and the blade, and or rather.
That's the assembly of this piece.
Yes. So you see, that's the blade retention screw. Top one, towards the end of the emitter.
Worth noting that the brass Graflex pins cannot be inserted until after these 2 parts are assembled, these 2 sub-assemblies are assembled.
Yep.
So don't put those in until then.
Yep.
This video is for the assembly of the crystal chamber. Parts required: the crystal chamber core, the brass runner rods, the lower emitter, the stainless steel rods, the upper and lower portions of the crystal chamber, the Kyber crystal, focusing lens. There are various small trim pieces, the retainers for the crystal and the lens, the nozzles. Of these parts, the crystal chamber core and the nozzles are manufactured from titanium. They can be flame weathered, like this piece here. There are various fasteners used as well. 2 256 set screws. These are for retaining the chassis. 4 080 set screws. These are used for retaining the shroud pieces on the steel rods. The button head screw, which is for this item here, the lower trim piece of the crystal chamber. The 440 screw here, which retains the lower ring here, and
right here.
The 2.
Sorry, I zoomed in.
Oh, okay. 256 socket heads, which hold the lower emitter to the crystal chamber core. To start assembling this, we start with the lower emitter, and we screw the brass rods into the 4 holes provided. The upper ring for the crystal chamber is notched on the inside. The notch corresponds to the notch at the top here. This piece is located like so. It should be assembled with a small dab of glue. With that assembled, we can move on to the core. The lower ring here has a small detent hole in it, which goes corresponding to the tapped hole here in the core. Those are aligned.
Everything fits really well.
It can be a challenge with the lighting to see that pin, but there. Goes in like so. Take the time to align it correctly, and use the screw here to retain it.
I have the right size one. Nope, it's the next one. Where are you? Is it that one?
Might be. No.
One of these guys. Nope, hold on a second. We got it. Oh, that's not good. I guess it's, yeah. Find it?
No.
Believe. So it's not the 1.5 mil. It's 1.27. Okay. Yep. 1.27 mil. You don't have to crank down real hard. Just snug.
Just needs enough to hold it in place. The lower shroud piece here sits in like so.
Yeah, let's talk about the wire passage.
Okay, sure.
So in this part we have this channel right here. All these holes right here correspond to the button hats that go inside the control box, and then there's a part listed for the momentary switch that sits in this channel on this part. So it looks like this, but it's got a 1.5 mil plunger on the top. It's like almost flat, but it's got a brass, the part numbers listed everywhere, and they're about 26 cents a piece. I would buy a couple extra. That way you get if you have a problem when you first get started, you got a backup. No big deal. So
the 256 button head
Yep.
is used there.
it's there. Found it?
I don't know.
Let me give her a whirl.
Yeah. There you go.
There it is. Gosh. Microscopic. Now we're including all the Allen keys for these small fasteners in the bag of fasteners. I mean, teeny tiny little itty bitty ones. These little 080 screws, set screws that go on the stainless rods that are ground, precision ground, so you can adjust the focusing lens and the nozzle for the crystal chamber. We'll get to that.
I think we'll do
They're
those
like microscopic, yeah.
So this is the smallest hex key that's included. This is for the 080 screws.
That goes in these parts right here. I get it to focus. These little holes right here and there are where the set screws go.
So we're going to set these up in here now. Just to start them off, they don't want to protrude through because they still need to leave room for the steel rods.
Yep, for the stainless rods to go in. And do not over torque any of these fasteners. It's totally unnecessary. Just a tiny bit, like every screw on this saber. Do not over torque them. It's like very gentle. This stuff is like the size of Rolex parts. That's all 3D machined. Multiple setups.
Okay, that's the 4 of those in. We should talk about the focusing lens next. So there are 3 pieces here.
Let me zoom in here. Okay.
This one, and this one, actually.
There, go down a little bit. There you go. There you go.
So the these 2 pieces go together like so, with again a dab of glue just to retain them. The focusing lens.
Yeah, they press together pretty snugly.
Yeah.
Everything fits really nice. But to keep them permanent, you just put a microscopic drop.
Those press together like so.
Alright, let's zoom in on that.
Sure.
So those parts all go together. If I can get this to zoom right. There you go.
Of the 2 titanium nozzles, one has a flat bottom. The flat bottom piece goes over here for the upper ring. The other one is chamfered on both sides. That inserts into here.
On the bottom of the focusing lens.
Again, a small dab of glue can be used just to retain it.
It'll all click together. Nice. Like that. On this titanium nozzle, for the focusing lens, you can heat weather this and turn it purple or blue or gold or whatever you like.
And the lenses, if polished out, will go reasonably clear.
Yep.
The second nozzle, the one with the flat bottom, that just inserts in the top here. Like so. For the second of these pieces, this is for the crystal. The crystal is first trimmed out on the bottom with this small brass piece here. Just requires a dab of glue to hold the 2 together.
Yep. All these crystals are machined identical to each other, purposely for these sabers.
That then inserts into here. And a small dab of glue is just used to retain this on here. The fit is pretty good between them. It can be retained really wherever looks good to you. Going over to the small trim pieces, these rods here are 1 piece each. The long one here goes into the lower ring down here
towards the ribs. on the right side, like that. Again, drop of glue on the inside.
The shorter one goes on the other side. I suppose it's actually advisable really to
probably
put
do
the
that.
small bits together, yeah.
Yeah. Easier to assemble before you do final assemble. Like if you're not sure, don't make it permanent with a tiny drop of glue until you're ready.
There we go. Like
Everything fits really nicely together. That's a high strength adhesive will make sure it just doesn't ever come apart. And you can don't go overboard with it.
These nozzle pieces here, do you want to zoom in on those?
Yeah, let me.
So the longer of the three here goes to the lower section of the ring.
Which, well, let me zoom in the lower section. Let me zoom out a little bit. If it'll let me. There it goes. Like that.
These are three separate pieces, these nozzles. They do need to be fixed together with, again, a small dab of glue. And they will insert into the hull as the posts did.
Just like that.
It's important not to insert any of these trim pieces into this hole here and this hole here. These are for the stainless steel rods, which the focusing ring and so on seat in. I think for the purpose of the video, we're not going to glue those in. Moving to the upper ring there are again two smalls here. Another nozzle similar to the lower one, and an electrode kind of deal. Again, it's important to make sure that they don't get inserted into the wrong holes. So we have the nozzle located in this hole here, and the electrode located in the lower hole on this side here. The two remaining holes are again for the stainless steel rods.
I'm going to insert a picture of. So right here, if you guys want to freeze and take a screenshot of that, it gives you kind of a blown up diagram.
Okay, so next comes the assembly of the rods and the smaller sub-assemblies that we put together with the crystal. We'll imagine the crystal is in here like we described earlier.
Nice tripod, huh?
Seat the rods there into the upper ring. The focusing lens goes on like so. And there's some play left in these parts to allow for movement.
Man,
we can try putting them together separately here. Run it in there. Okay, with those rods seated in there, to hold the rods in the same location relative to each other. We'll temporarily and lightly cinch down these two set screws here. This is a little one. Where did I put the tiny
guy? Right there.
I think those are the same.
Are they? No.
No?
No, that's shorter. That's it.
It's better if I try this first.
It's so small you can lose it. You guys got to keep in mind these parts. Lay out a tray or something with all these small parts on it. If you lose them, we didn't make extras. So be very, very careful. This is like an expert level. I mean, anybody can do it. Just take your time.
And virtually no torque at all was required to
none.
join those.
Yeah, the thread is microscopic.
So then, as I said, we're going to imagine that the crystal is assembled into there. That part is loaded on then behind. No need to tighten those screws down just yet. And we're going to try and seat all of these parts together now. I'm just going to reinsert the lower ring back in the bottom there.
You'll see where everything indexes. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here.
Sure. So it can be fiddly to try and get all of these holes to line up now. Let's screw this out, screw down.
Yep.
Okay. So here we go. We have to align the 4 brass rods in the corresponding holes on the core here, and then also align the 2 stainless steel rods with corresponding holes on both sides. A dab of glue can be used on one end here. This will all be glued together so it won't fall apart in my hands. Okay, so we have the rods and the ring and crystal assemblies loaded onto them. We're going to load the lower ring on the correct holes, and then load the crystal chamber core from above. Line up the brass rings first, brass rods first, goes together, and then just have to align the lower ring, and it seats. Then from the top, we want to load in the socket screws.
Yep. Okay. Very important, you guys. Do not over torque these. It's not necessary. We got just tiny adjustment here. There they go. Okay. Don't over torque them. It's not necessary. That's why I'm holding the Allen key this way. Just snug. You'll break the fastener, steel fastener off inside the titanium. Trying to go too hard. Then you got problems. The brass rods, you may need to come along the bottom edge of these because the titanium is really hard to do a blind hole in because it's a super alloy. So you may need to just break the edge a little bit more on the bottom of the brass rod to get everything to seat because of a tiny imperfection in the bottom of the blind hole in the titanium part. You may or may not, just to get everything to align. You notice it all comes together right here. Very important. Make sure that your set screws are facing outward on the focusing lens and the crystal ring. That way you can adjust and tighten them where you want them in here, because they slide along the stainless steel rods like that.
And important for anyone who skips through the video and just got to this point now, the small parts should be in there by this stage.
Yes.
We're just showing it without glue.
It should be like this already. We're just kind of doing our best. It's hard to see. Just take your time. Take your time. Everything aligns just so.
So with that all in there, I guess we'll cinch down the, lightly cinch down the set screw in the back here, just to lock the lower ring in place. And
Right here.
that's like so.
That brass rod.
So these obviously can be locked in location where they are.
Like this. Whoops. So you've got your nozzle, you've got your other strikers and all your other electrodes and everything already in there, your rods in the back, got your crystal in, all those sub-assemblies put together. I would go in and I would weather all the brass, or you'll see all the really fine details of the machining and the small rings and all the 3 dimensions to make it pop. That way when it's together, it really just, everything really stands out. This is just a quick tutorial.
I guess the final part for this assembly is just the set screws that go in the bottom here.
Yeah.
And here. Those locate
the chassis. Yep. One other thing, what was I gonna? Oh yeah, when you come and you start to put the rest of these parts together, and these screws in, this screw in, the glass eye, the red button, everything, and you've gotten all these parts in here, don't tighten one all the way down. Don't tighten any of it down until you have it all assembled. Don't tighten any of it down until you have it all assembled. And then you can go through and then you can snug everything up. Just gently. You don't have to really torque on it. Don't. Just, I can't say it enough times. Don't over torque any of the fasteners, especially when you get to these tiny little 1/64s to hold the control box on. We'll go over that next.
Okay, so just the small pieces that need to be assembled for that final assembly there. There are the red button, and there's the plastic part that goes inside, the aluminum part which it goes into.
Yep. Now, if you want to, you can make this a through hole through this part. Anybody can do that. That way you get shine through on that. There is shine through on the glass eye, but you'd have to drill a small hole in the back of this where the red button goes.
There's the glass eye there. Again, both these pieces just need a dab of glue.
Yep.
I already dismantled our sub-assembly for that, but with the assembled upper, it slides over and we loosely put everything together before we tighten it down.
And we can move on to, here's the top of the blade holder that goes in. You're going to want to put your other Graplex pin in after you assemble it. They will not go in before, so on the bottom of the blade holder, do not put the Graplex pins in first. You can do it with the top, but you can't do it with the bottom. So what else? I guess we talk about control cards and buttons now.
Yeah, so there's the buttons.
So here's the button hats. These go inside the control box. Alright. The big parts protrude through the holes. Oops, sorry. In the control box, like that. Get that hat lined up, there it goes. So these little pins will touch on, will go through the shroud and into where the switches are located. So when you're putting the control box on, you get your buttons inside the hole. Just lightly, because these are 1/64 stainless screws, you don't have to put them in to the saber very hard. Just get it snug, because you will break the stainless off inside the titanium, and then you're gonna have problems like that. Just lightly, very lightly. Very important. Do not over tighten these screws. They are stainless steel, and you will snap them off in the titanium because it's a lot harder. They're 1/64, so they don't need a whole lot of torque to hold it on there. That's it. You may have to maybe hit these holes a little bit, and maybe the other holes under here in the shroud. Just kind of open them up a little bit to get everything to fit right. Because getting a dozen holes through 3 parts to align perfectly is a very tricky business. So you have here, 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 and here. You may or may not have to kind of just take a Dremel or a file and just file away a tiny bit on the shroud. This is just one of the setup parts here. But maybe just file everything. You want to loosely fit it all together before you tighten any of this stuff down, any of these screws down, any of this, and then come back and just loosely fit everything together, and then just tighten everything. Gently, not hard. You don't have to reef down on it. But that's it.